what you think happening now? It is the Shifter Podcast on YouTube with Tim Tactics to say.
Welcome, all the fans of the Shifter Podcast. Today we have a retired counterintelligence and disinformation agent for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. He was in Area 51, one of the few people on planet Earth who can actually answer how that is. And I have the pleasure to talk to him today. With me is Richard Doty. Hi, Rick. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Tim. Good to see you.
One question, and I know it's going to come up probably because even on Gaia.com, and we've done a lot of interviews together, you are called a little bit of controversial guest because you used to work in the disinformation field. So I want to give you an opportunity to just speak to all the viewers about how that unfolds and what's your role right now?
Well, going back, I was a counterintelligence officer for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. And so one of my jobs was deception operations. Within the government, we didn't call it disinformation, we called it deceptions. And there were operations that I had to do because I was a disinformation officer, as most people would call me. But in actuality, I had a mission. I had a job to do. And when I was given an assignment, I had to do that work. And some of that work involved disinforming or performing deception operations against a segment of the media or the UFO community. And that's why people still coin me as being the disinformation guy. But I did my job. I had a job to do and I did it. But not all my work in counterintelligence involved disinformation. Today, I'm not a disinformation person. I left the government a long time ago, 1988, although I did work for Dr. Hal Puthoff for 12 years at the Institute for Advanced Studies, where we did work on DARPA projects. I did travel all over, including Area 51 back then and other places, to work on projects that Dr. Puthoff had. But today, I'm a private person. I promote myself. I write articles. I am a frequent guest on Gaia, as you well know. We did a number of episodes together. And today I'm out of government service. I don't work for the government, and I don't disinform people anymore.
And probably you've seen that all these YouTube things pop up where people talk about Area 51 more than probably they have ever talked about it. And you are one of the persons that have been in service at Area 51. Could you describe that to people?
This was like magic.
Increíble.
Lots of fun and unexpected. I came all the way from Australia to be here, and I'm glad I did. The location. The food was really delicious. It was amazing.
Then you are on one beautiful energy frequency. Everything is being taken care of, is beautifully synchronized.
Me ha encantado. Estoy muy feliz.
Is there anything you can share about this place and demystify Area 51 a little bit?
Yeah, well, Area 51, if you went to where people call Area 51, you'd find that it's not called Area 51. It's called Groom Lake Complex, Groom Lake Air Force Base. It's the home of the Air Force Flight Test Center, Detachment 3, out of Edwards Air Force Base. It's a test and evaluation base. It tests a new technology, research and development. And so that's Area 51 that the people outside the government calls, but it's actually Groom Lake. And there are a number of different complexes at Groom Lake. There's different areas, such as Area 51, Area 50. And the reason it's called Area 51 is at one time it was part of the Nevada Test Center, or Nevada Test Site, where they experimented with nuclear weapons. And when they first surveyed and sectioned out that land in the center part of Nevada, they did it in areas, from Area 1 all the way up to Area 53. And the area that Groom Lake is located was called Area 51. And that's how it was coined, Area 51. But within there's different places, highly complex area, highly complex operations, highly classified. Almost everything that is done there is classified in one way or the other. Do we have extraterrestrial crafts there that we've recovered at crash sites? I would guess yes. Are we reverse engineering them? I would guess yes, that we are. Where would be the best place to test and reverse engineer extraterrestrial crafts? That would be the place.
On September 19, 2019, there was this infamous activity on Facebook where people wanted to storm into Area 51. And I know at certain points it was your job to even prevent these things. Do you think people had a chance to even be successful? And if they did, do you think they would have seen something that would have made it to YouTube?
Actually, I was out there during that time period. For 11 days, not trying to storm it, but I was working with a film crew doing a documentary. But first of all, the base, the cantonment area, or the actual complex, is inside a very large area. The Nellis Test and Training Range encompasses thousands and thousands of square miles within Nye County and Lincoln County. So the gates are miles away from would be Area 51. And so for anyone trying to enter, it would be virtually a suicide mission to get to where all the classified stuff was. So and in reality, no, they couldn't have stormed it, even if they had a massive amount of people trying to do that. One of the things they did, the Air Force did, was they brought in hundreds and hundreds of troops, military police, to strengthen the civilian security force that guarded the outer perimeter. And then they brought in other methods of security, aerial, they flew drones. There were drones up in the air 24 hours a day, 365, not 365 days, but 24 hours a day during that 7-day period, flying around the perimeter, keeping track of everyone's movements. Plus, the government had secret people within the crowd watching them. The FBI, my former agency, the OSI, which these are all federal agencies. We had federal marshals, they had U.S. Secret Service out there. So they were infiltrating the crowd. So anything the crowd was doing, the government knew what they were doing. So that was a very interesting time. There were a lot of things happening out there, a lot of partying, but to the best of my knowledge, there were only 2 people that actually tried to get inside Area 51 at the Rachel Gate, and they were arrested immediately, almost immediately, by Lincoln County sheriffs. So that's, and not only did we have the military police, we had Nye County sheriffs, we had Nevada State Police, and we had Lincoln County sheriffs patrolling the outer perimeter. And those 2 people, they're the only ones that I know that actually tried to enter. They actually did enter, but they got arrested within 20 feet.
For 2 episodes, I had the immense pleasure of being the host of Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia, and I was interviewing you. which was very, very nice to do so. Let's have a look at that. Today on Cosmic Disclosure.
The perimeter of the base is so far away from the actual cantonment area of the base where all the secrets are. Again, it was a very narrow need to know for me. I knew the complex existed, but I didn't know anything about what was there until one escaped. And then I was given access and then cover up the fact that it escaped. If it had been in contact with anyone that wasn't authorized or anyone outside the base, the local community outside Nellis Test and Training Range, it would be our responsibility as OSI agents to go out and disinform the people. So I had to have knowledge of that particular species that escaped.
What is the most spectacular story of that time that you would like to share in the Shifter podcast right now?
Probably one of the most complicated but the most successful operations U.S. intelligence did during the time of the 70s and 80s was the U.S. intelligence, because I worked for them, infiltrated every single UFO group in existence, not only in the United States, but in other countries. Now, most other countries didn't have a well-organized UFO groups, but some did. For instance, Germany, France had one, Japan had one. And so we infiltrated those groups. And the reason we did this, we wanted to know what they knew. Now, UFO groups, especially back in the days with APRO, CAUSE, and MUFON, these groups had connections within a government. They had their own sources within the government. So we wanted to know what those sources were telling these groups. So that's why we infiltrated these groups, and we had sources of information within these groups. And one of our most successful sources we had within UFO groups was Bill Moore. A very controversial figure also, because in 1989, he let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, because at a UFO convention, he told everybody what he did as being a spy within UFO groups. And he was actually, we were paying him to do that. And there were many other people that were involved in this too, not just, and I can tell you right now that some of the people that were very prominent within the UFO community, such as Robert Dean, Sergeant Major Robert Dean was also, he's passed away now, so I can talk about it, but he was also a source of information for U.S. intelligence.
What do you think about the current situation of disclosure? We are having congressional hearings. It is more and more getting into the mainstream. My opinion is that there's an effort to keep the narrative in one's hand and control the information that comes out. What is your opinion on the current disclosure subject?
Well, I agree with you. The government, based on the information they have deep in their files at the CIA or at the Pentagon, they're not going to release any information that jeopardizes national security. Any information that pertains to sources or methods obtained, the American people are not going to get that. I think that eventually, at some point down the road, we will get a watered down version of what the government has known historically. I don't think currently they'll talk about what they know or what they've gathered. Historically, I'm almost positive. I've been to Washington, D.C. To testify in front of the Department of Defense Inspector General's office in January 2022 and in September 2022. They asked me about what I did. They showed me some reports that I had done back in the 80s. In fact, one of the most comical parts of the January 2022 hearing that testified in front of the Department of Defense IG, well, they showed me a report I did in 1981. They gave me the report. The only problem is it was heavily redacted. And I looked at the report, and there was certain parts of the report I could look at and determine it was my report. I did it. And I said, yeah, that report, yeah, I did this report. What do you want to know? And the DODIG said, well, we want to ask you some questions about it. I said, well, you don't have one that's not redacted? And they said, no, we can't get one. I said, wait a minute, you're the DODIG, and you can't go over to OSI and get or DIA, a Defense Intelligence Agency, and get an unredacted report? They won't give it to us. I said, that's incredible. I said, I can't remember everything I did during this project, but I did answer all the questions, most of the questions they asked me. Well, they called me back in September 2022. This time, they had an unredacted copy. It took them 9 months to get an unredacted copy of my report, which was still classified. And I talked to them about it, but I remembered most of the report from 2022. But that's just the comical portion of the government. One agency doesn't talk to the other agency. The Defense Intelligence Agency at one time had all the clearinghouses of all the documents, everything pertaining to Project Blue Book. In 1969, when the Air Force said, we don't want Blue Book anymore, they did the condom report. The condom report supposedly finalized. We don't want them anymore. We want some other agency to take all these files. Well, the DIA put their hand up and said, we'll take it, because they were a relatively new agency. They only became in existence in 1961. So everything was turned over to the DIA. So from that point on, the DIA had everything. Now the DIA doesn't want to share anything. And that's the problem. And now we have the U.S. Space Force, a new part of our military. They have information that was passed down to them from Space Command, satellite tracking, everything that was photographed by our secret satellites. They're not sharing it with anybody. So that's the complexity that we have. So that's why I say I don't think we'll ever get a full disclosure. We'll get a watered down version to disclosure.
It's an interesting situation that, especially the U.S., and I think it's historically grown over time, that the U.S. is so compartmentalized, where one agency just doesn't have the same information as another one. And some, like even the higher, like DIA is supposed to be one of the highest official defense intelligence agencies in the U.S. Even they seem to be, cruising around some information that is older than the most current information on UFOs. I guess we do know that the disclosure movement and bringing up Space Force is one of the counteractions in order to bring these agencies together. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, I would agree on that. And you're right. The intelligence agencies are always jealous of each other, especially if one has information that they think, oh, wow, this is fantastic. We'll share it with the White House, but we're not going to share it with another intelligence agency. And DIA and CIA always had a feud going on. And then Air Force intelligence, Naval intelligence, Office of Naval Intelligence, they all had feuds, so they didn't share information. But there are other, I know when I was in Germany, worked with the German intelligence, BND. BND would get something from Russia back in the days when actually BND had great sources in Russia, and they wouldn't share it necessarily with the United States unless the United States shared something with them. And even with inside Germany, the LFV, the BFV, the German counterintelligence, the federal side of it, the Bundes, wouldn't share stuff with the Landes or vice versa. And because I worked with all of them, they'd get some information about primarily terrorist groups back in those days, not necessarily UFOs. So, and in the United States, you're absolutely right. There's a jealousy, and we're not going to get everything that we hope to get from disclosure from one particular agency. We're going to get a White House version of what they want released to the public.
The new elect president, Donald Trump, was asked on Joe Rogan on the podcast about UFOs. Let's have a quick look at that.
There's a lot of interest in the people coming from space, you know.
Yes.
And I know you're interested in
Oh,
that.
very
too.
interested in that. How much did they tell you about that?
A lot.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd they tell you?
We do know that about 95% of everything in the universe is actually socially very acceptable. We do know that statistically that is true for Earth. It is true for every human that you meet on Earth. But it also scales up for the rest of at least this version of the universe, and it becomes even more friendly over the period of time and over one's own development, because the universe is, as the word says, just one life form. So do you think that the elected president, Donald Trump, is given information that gives him the idea of the UFO phenomenon being scary in order to raise some funds? Or how do you estimate that situation?
Well, I can tell you one thing, that President Reagan was fully briefed. Not all presidents are fully briefed. Carter didn't want to be, and when Carter was briefed, he cried. Nixon knew, and that's as far back as I actually know, because I have people that still are alive in our advanced working group that briefed him. But Reagan knew about the dangers or the hostiles, and that's why he made so many different statements about, you know, what if there was a alien race and so forth that was going to attack Earth. Obama was briefed fully. And Biden, of course, was vice president during that time, so he must have been briefed too, although I don't know that for a fact. I know that Trump had a 2-hour briefing on January 29th of 2017. He had a 2-hour briefing. Now, what he was told in that 2-hour briefing, I don't know. Only he knows. But the normal briefing that Reagan got was close to 6 hours. Now, 2 hours, I guess he just got a summation of what the United States government knows and what we've got, what we've collected. I don't know that he was fully briefed. But I think this time around, he would want to be fully briefed. I think he understands, based on the show that you just, Joe Rogan show, the public interest in UFOs are so high now. 78% now. Used to be like around 51, 52, 53. It's 78% of the American people want to know what we know about extraterrestrials. And so I think Trump knows this. And I think this is just my prediction, but I think at some point in the first few months of the president, his presidency, he'll designate a UAP czar, so to speak, somebody that's going to delve into it and release as much as he can. Now, I know Harris, if she had become president, I think she would have been more hesitant and more controlled by the intelligence community. You got to understand that Trump doesn't like the CIA. Biden loved the CIA. So they wanted to protect the CIA. Trump, I don't think he just announced that John Ratcliffe will be the director of Central Intelligence. John Ratcliffe is very, very close to Trump. So I think there's not going to be, Trump's not going to worry about upsetting the apple cart by releasing information about UAPs. There's so much to the subject that we'll never know. We'll know, but other people won't know because it's still classified. But there's things that the American people should know and must know, and the American government is responsible for that.
It's an interesting take, especially if you consider that more and more scientific facts are coming out. There's right now, the Space Force has invested quite I think 150 million US dollars, which is not a lot of money to actually look into a propulsion system, but they are looking into certain nuclear propulsion systems that, and hopefully I'm not spoiling that, but there is certain technology already in use for quite some centuries, and it's now being rolled out in such a way that it has like a logic behind it. Is there anything in particular, considering technology or some incidents that you know of that you can share?
I learned this from working with Dr. Putoff, or for Dr. Putoff in the 12 years, is that we know, and I'm not giving away any secrets, we know that there's more than one race of extraterrestrials that visited Earth. And each one of these races have different technologies, different biologics. They're not just one. So we can't categorize alien technology in one small dish. We have to analyze different technologies. We have learned from the technology of the Roswell crash. That was the Eben crash. It came from another planet. We know this creature because we had one in captivity for 5 years. We learned a lot from them. Okay, now we analyze another crash, say the Kingman crash. That's a different technology. We look at that craft, even back in the 50s, and we look at the Eben craft. We say, wow. These aren't the same. So we knew then that there were different species. And one of the complexities of understanding this was we have to develop our own scientific techniques to master what this technology is. And now it's not one technologies, it's 5 or 6 or 10 or, well, probably more than that now, different races that have visited here and that we have obtained their technologies. And some of them, as we found out in Dr. Putoff's lab, are so advanced that we can't even go to first grade to understand what this technology is. So how do we reverse engineer it? We can't. We have to put it on the shelf. 10 years from now, we'll bring it down and see if our technology advanced enough to understand this. And we can't. We put it on the shelf for another 10 or 15 or 20 years. That's what's happening at our laboratories. Los Alamos National Laboratories, Sandia National Laboratories, Lawrence Livermore, and others. We get the brains, the top scientists from not just the United States, from all over the world coming to look at a gadget saying, okay, how do we understand this thing? But what we have done was we've had, as you well know, we've had ambassadors come here and help us. And I think the most most highly classified portion of this is that where they come from, how they get here, and what they tell us, and how they had advanced our technology through their understanding, making us or teaching us technologies that are out there in the star systems. And I think I can't go more than that into details on that.
I understand that because we're on YouTube, and that's all good. I talked to David Adair a few months ago, maybe. He was on the Shifter podcast too, and he talked about the moon landing because he was deeply involved with rockets and so on. And he said one of the major motivations for the moon landing was exactly to analyze what's actually going on the moon, what's going on with ET presence around the moon. What do you know about that subject?
The United States government had a number of different programs to understand or to civilize, or not civilize, but to build military bases on the moon. That started back in the 50s and 60s plans, and they're on the internet now. But we didn't realize what was on the moon until we landed on the moon. And I personally sat down because Dr. Putoff and Neil Armstrong were friends. I've sat down face to face to talk to Neil Armstrong a number of times down at Austin, Texas, at where the Institute of Advanced Studies was. Although he didn't go into any great details about what he saw or what he was told. He said, this is what he said to me. I can't tell you what I was told, what we were told, Cernan and the three astronauts. That's classified. But I can tell you what I saw. That's not classified. That's what I saw visually. And I saw things up there on the moon that nobody could explain. And when we went to the secure frequency, radio frequency, to talk to Earth, we were told, don't worry about that stuff. They're not going to hurt you. And that's what stuck in Neil Armstrong's mind. What do you mean? You know these things up here? You know they're not going to hurt me? Well, you know they're not hostile? How do you know? He said, that question was never told to me. And that's the question that's stumped me for all these years, is they knew. How did we know? How did they know? Well, we had classified missions to the moon in the middle 60s, during the Gemini phase of it, that nobody knows about. We put satellites around the moon back in those days. The dark side of the moon. Remember, the moon doesn't move. There's a back side to it. And those things are still classified because the government's not giving up that stuff. NASA and NSA and the National Security Administration has that information, Mr. Armstrong said, and they're not going to tell you. And one of the other questions I asked him was, when you orbited the moon, you went on the dark side of it. What did you see? He said, we didn't see anything. It was dark. He said, but we heard a lot of stuff. And I said, but it was recorded, and therefore I can't talk about it. So we knew a lot about the moon before we ever got there. And we knew that it was inhabited, and that there were alien bases on the moon.
That's an interesting part where people talk about Santa Claus being the code name for, ET presence on the moon. And there's also a recording where some of the astronauts are clearly saying Santa Claus is real, and they're sending that back to Earth.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
Rick, thank you so much. We're running a little late on the Shifter podcast, but it's so fascinating talking to you. I want to give you an opportunity to speak about your most recent programs and projects, what's going on. I know you, just as me, as you're filming for Gaia as well, but also there's a kids movie coming up that you designed. Maybe you want to share something about that. Here's the camera for you.
Yeah, we in conjunction with several other people, we're working on a animated movie about the Loch Ness Monster. It's a children's view of the Loch Ness Monster. It's unique. We've did all the animation. We've done the filming. It's gone to editing, and then it'll be circulated. Probably it'll be a year before it comes out, but it's not something I would ever imagine me working on, a children's movie, but a documentary. But it was very interesting and very fun doing it, and look for it next year. Other than that, I'm working for Gaia. I travel. I've been to Japan. I've done lectures in Japan, Copenhagen. I've been invited to other places around the world, including Rio de Janeiro, that I'll be going down next summer. And I just am very intimately involved in the subject of UFOs and UAPs, and I want disclosure to happen, and I'll do everything in my power to facilitate that disclosure process.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rick. One last question, because I do know, first of all, let people know if they can find you on social media, Facebook, or your website. And if you could give like one positive type of outlook for, the tomorrow that we wish for us to have, what would that be?
Well, I have email of my email's been on around the internet for a long time, topan166@gmail.com. I also am on UAMN TV. The Doty Chronicles are on YouTube. You can look for the Doty Chronicles. I've filmed about 15 episodes. I have about 15 more to film in the very near future. So as soon as they're filmed, it takes some time to get on, but it'll be on UAMN TV. So look for the Doty Chronicles on there. The most positive thing I can present or relate is that disclosure. I have a very strong opinion on this, and I have a lot of people that I still know within the government, and I believe that the American public is going to be surprised in the near future about disclosure. The American public is going to learn about some aspects of the United States government involvement with extraterrestrials from either 1947 or maybe even before that. The historical side of the U.S. government's involvement with U.S. UFOs. We're not going to learn all the nits and bits and that you want to know about them and all the secretive stuff. Anything that's going to jeopardize national security, you're not going to know about. But in the future, mark my word, the United States government is going to disclose to the American public some of what they know about UFOs.
Everyone, that was the Shifter podcast where we talk with everyone relevant in the shift. This time it was Richard Doty. Also, please be aware that on December 24, we are going to do a 4-hour full live stream on YouTube where I'm going to interview some of my favorite guests. And until then, happy shifting, everyone, and thanks for watching.